to all participants. So it is requested you please disable your video as well as audio to enable the bandwidth so that the session runs off smoothly. So please post your question in the chat section. I'm not sure whether the chat section is working in this meeting because some users experience there is difficulty in posting chat section. You can always ask questions at the end of the session. So the questions will be asked at the end. Yes, whether the participants can hear. I'm experiencing some poor audio. Hello, whether I'm audible?
Yes, I can hear you, Selvam.
Yeah. So over to you, madam.
Thank you, Selvam. Good evening, all participants, and welcome, Ms. Madhura Asanare, and thank you for giving us this webinar. Ms. Madhura Asanare is a clinical lead physiotherapist and a director of Allied Health Solution, Virginia, USA. She is our esteemed alumni from the batch of 1999, and she has completed her post-graduation in musculo-skeletal physiotherapy in the year 2006 from Oakland University, Michigan, USA. She is a practicing manual therapist and she is the founder of Allied Health Solution in the year 2015. This is an outpatient physiotherapy facility in the suburb of Washington, D.C. She has employed many physiotherapists under this foundation. Welcome, Madhura, and over to you.
Thank you, Vaishali ma'am. Thank you, Selvam, for inviting me here. I'm very grateful to Manipal for giving me all the education. Thank you, Dr. Arun Maya sir, Mani sir, John sir. I miss all of you, and I feel very grateful to be here today talking about my little journey. And also thank you to all the students, my classmates, juniors and seniors, to take time out of your day and join me here. So today I'm gonna give you a little idea of what we're gonna talk about. I'm gonna first talk about my journey in short when I graduated from Manipal and how I came about to starting my own physical therapy practice. After that, I have a small PowerPoint presentation, and in that we'll go over how to start a business, how to run a business, and make your own mark in the market, and finally, which is very relevant to what we're going through right now, how to survive a crisis as a business. Okay. After I finish my story, I'll take a couple of minutes break if you want to say, ask something or post something in the chat. If I'm able to see it, I'll include that in my talk. And then after every slide, I'll pause a little bit as well so you can gather your thoughts. And in the end, we'll open the floor for about 10-15 minutes for any questions. So just sit back and enjoy today's story. It's a little funny, but it's at the same time, I'm hoping you can get have some takeaways from it, and it inspires you to do something on your own. Okay, so good to go, Selvam. Can I get started?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's
all right.
Yours.
Thank you so much. So as Vaishali ma'am told you, I was batch of 99 physical therapy, which was a decade, last century. So anyways, I finished physical therapy in 2004 from Manipal. That same year in the fall, I joined Oakland University, Michigan for my master's. It's a great program, and I did a graduate certificate in orthopedics as well. I always liked orthopedics, and it was really difficult to do it in Michigan, but I feel like that was a stepping stone. When you are studying in a different country for the first time, it is almost like a window to their world. It was so I finished that in about 2 years' time. While I was doing that, I started preparing for my national board examination. As most of you probably know, in the U.S., there is all across the 50 states, we have a board exam. It's about 2.5 to 4 hours worth of about 250 questions. They pretty much ask everything under the sun in physical therapy. So anyways, I passed that exam. So while I was doing my master's, I also started working as a physical therapist with this outpatient practice, which specialized in the spine. Now, here's a little bit of information. When I first joined that practice, all my friends asked me, like, aren't you streamlining yourself too much into something which is so specific? Because if you're an orthopedic manual therapist, you want to work with the knees, you want to work with the elbows, shoulders. But what I realized is you get better, you get really good at one thing. So once you have that down, it's easy to learn other stuff. So I don't regret that decision to just start working with a company where they only work with the spine. I did that for about 5 years. In that practice, they were really encouraging all of their physical therapists to go through the McKenzie certification. It is a long and drawn out process, quite expensive, but the company paid for it. There's part A, B, C, D, and E, and then there is a practical exam, and then there is a written test. So this whole process took over 2 years, and I was McKenzie certified. And it is a very good tool. It's another thing, if any one of you wants to get certified as a McKenzie therapist, because towards the end, when I talk about telehealth, McKenzie comes in very handy. So in 2009, we had to move to Northern Virginia. I was married, and for my husband's work, we had to move to Northern Virginia, which is very close to DC. I started working in another outpatient clinic, and it was a general outpatient. We saw all cases, post-surgicals, carpal tunnel, you name it, we saw it. And that was in DC, and it's a very varied population. Like, you're talking about a mixing bowl of 25, 30 different countries. So the clinic was really a good experience, and I feel like towards the end I became a director in that clinic, and I feel like that is where I got a lot of my managerial experience. While I was treating there, we had a huge Spanish-speaking population, and thanks to Manipal, I thought I should teach myself how to speak Spanish, because you guys know we had to learn Kannada and we had to learn Malayalam, and we used to crib back then, but I mean, that was such a good tip. You just teach yourself as you go, and that has really helped me. Now I am able to conduct an evaluation in Spanish. So thank you all the teachers for pushing us and giving us all those cases with who speak only Tulu, Kannada, or Malayalam. But by that time, this was 2013, I had 2 kids by then, an infant and a 2-year-old. So it became difficult to commute to DC, and the hours were inflexible. So I had to take a step back and rethink what to do. Me and my coworker back then were thinking of going into practice together. And our model was cash pay, which is a little different here, because in the United States, health insurance is really big, but we were planning of just doing a cash pay basis. We looked at some facilities, we looked at some places to rent and everything, and but somehow it didn't go through. Maybe I'm not sure why, it fizzled out. but I did see one or two office spaces available. So for 2 years, I went ahead and did home health. Home health is when I go to the patient's house and treat them. And it was good. It was the need of the hour. I could make my own hours. I had 2 little babies at home. It was working out okay. But towards the end of 2 years, I was not enjoying being a physical therapist anymore, which is sad because for 10 years, I loved my job. And as a physical therapist, I had zero stress. And it's a very gratifying profession, you all know. You get somebody better and they thank you forever. And the results are palpable. But once I did home health for too long, and nothing against home health, it needs to be done. We are doing good work. But I couldn't, the manual therapist inside me was not very happy. So we were toying with the idea of what to do. And one day I had a discussion with my husband, and I told him, first and foremost, okay, starting a business. Then we're going to talk about creating a niche as an entrepreneur, strategies for operations and maintenance, and surviving the crisis as a business. In starting a business, first we're going to talk about how to take that very first step and where to get started, right? The basics, the ABCs. Then creating a niche as an entrepreneur, we're going to be talking about how to set yourself apart from others because as we all know, the market is already saturated for physical therapy. The third one is going to be strategies for operations and maintenance. This is the day-to-day handling of situations at work, hiring, firing, how to run a clinic, how to keep the patients happy, the business part of it. And then the last one is surviving a crisis like the one we're going through right now as a business, okay? And then we'll open the floor for questions, right? Okay, so the first one is starting a business. This is exactly how I look like when I decided I wanted to start on my own. Okay, so what is the first step? So there are different reasons why one wants to be an entrepreneur. Are you unhappy with your current situation? Is there a lot of politics at your workplace? Or do you just want to make a difference? In my case, it was a combination. I was a little unhappy with the situation I was in working as a therapist. And the other one is I did want to make a difference. I wanted to do things my own way. I worked for almost 10 years in other physical therapy clinics, and I have no complaints. They were good employers. It was a good place to work at, both of them. But at the same time, I always thought about how I could have done things differently. And that was my biggest motivation to start. And now the very, very first step is, what do I do? So you can start with thinking of a name for your clinic. I chose Allied Health Solutions as almost like an homage to my school from Manipal. We were College of Allied Health Sciences. The reason why I chose that is I'll get to you later on that point, is because allied health means physical therapy, occupational therapy, and speech language pathology, to start with a few, and then there are more. So I wanted it to be a combination of all these three. So far it hasn't turned out like that, but that was the goal in mind. Now, do you have a business model in mind? This, I think, is really important. Well, this is about entrepreneurship, so it is for-profit organization, no judging here, okay? But what I want to ask is, do you want to do a franchise or do you want to set up a mom and pop shop? With the franchise, there are pros and cons. They have already done the work for you. All you do is step in and reap the benefits of it. But mind you, it is their procedures, it is their protocols. So you are ahead of the clinic, but you're a little restricted in what you can do and what you cannot do. But at the same time, the profits are easy to get because it's a well-oiled machine at that point for them. So it's like opening a McDonald's versus having your own mom and pop sandwich shop. Okay, I chose the mom and pop sandwich shop because A, franchise needs a little bit more capital to start with, and I didn't want to put in that much money. And B, I felt like it would just be a glorified name as an owner, but I still won't be able to make a lot of decisions. So we'll talk about that. But at the same time, I want to talk about, this is just a brick and mortar clinic that I have, but there are so many different ways of starting a business. You can have a staffing company. You can even open a rehab center. There are just so many different things that you can do. What you need to find out is, what are you comfortable with? What can you do better? What can you excel at? And then you take that idea and run with it. The next one is, are you qualified enough? Now this here, I want to break or debunk some myths that you have to have a certain number of years under your belt before you start on your own. So this is for all the young grads that don't feel like you need to have 20 years under your belt before you want to start something on your own. If you have a great idea, if you have the right type of market, then go for it, you know. But at the same time, you want to make sure that you should know what is your risk for your appetite for risk. So when I was starting the clinic, I used to do a lot of reading, and somewhere I read that you have to go for about 1,000 days without a profit. That doesn't mean you won't make a single dollar, but what I'm saying is you won't reap a whole lot of benefits. So can your company sustain that? Can you sustain that? Can your family sustain that? By the way, it did not take 1,000 days for Allied Health Solutions, but this is something one should keep in mind. The other thing is you should have a plan B, a fallback plan. So in our case, what I did was I continued my home health job even after the clinic was established. I forwarded all the calls to my cell phones, and I would be on my rounds in home health because at that point, home health was what was paying the bills. I knew how to do it. I had been doing it for about 2 years. And it was, but at the same time, I didn't want to not start at all. So it took about 3 or 4 months for the patients to start coming in, but I was always available on the phone, and I would start to go to the clinic as needed. But then there came a point where one day I was doing my home health rounds, and there was a walk-in patient in the clinic, and I missed them. And that's the day I decided that I have to jump in with both my feet, because it's very easy to keep doing what you're comfortable with. So at some point you have to cut those strings and jump in. So that was around April or May, and I decided even though I might go into a loss at this point, I had to stop doing home health because I was losing the clients, and I had to be physically present at the clinic. So so there's always a fine line. And last but not the least, you have to find out what your laws are, local rules and regulations are. So for example, you're already working for someone in an outpatient clinic and you're not happy with it. So you have a place in mind, you have enough money, and you're ready to go. but you need to check the contract or whatever papers you signed in when you got hired in. Is there a non-compete? For example, in the United States, there are a lot of practices that will make you sign a non-compete, where if you have worked with a particular clinic and you stop working for them, you cannot work in maybe a 2 or 5 mile radius for the next year or 2 years or whatever. And it's a fine print, but it is very, very important. I know of clinics that have taken their former employees to court and won because they did not adhere to the non-compete. So this is one of them. Not to scare you, it's not some you might never have signed it, but this is something you should keep in the back of mind. The other one is when you're trying to hire somebody. Are there any reservations? Do you have to follow the local guidelines for hiring somebody? Then at the same time, you need to find out the building that you are renting from. Do they know what business you have? For example, my building's name is ABC, and I have been in that building as a physical therapist for 20 years. When I signed my lease, I said that I do not want any other physical therapist renting space in this building. And landlords are okay with it. And then you go ahead and sign a lease without them knowing if you have a physical therapy business. So essentially, they'll have to tell you to leave. So you need to find out the rules and regulations. On the other hand, when you go into a building and you're the only physical therapy practice there, you can sign a lease saying that you don't want any other PT clinic opening in those premises. So these are some examples, but what I'm saying is read the fine print. And consulting lawyers is important. And I'll get to that. I'll get to how we can do that pretty reasonably, because lawyers, as you know, are expensive. Okay. All right. So, okay. Let me pause for a second and see if anybody has any questions.
I think chat box is not working. So participants, if you have any questions, you can ask her directly.
Anybody? Okay. All right. So we're going to get started with our next slide. Okay, creating a niche as an entrepreneur. Okay. All right, so this is really important because this is where you're going to stand out. This is what is going to decide if you are going to survive as a business or not. Okay, so the very first one is location, 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 as they say in real estate. It's really important because think about it. You don't want to have a physical therapy practice in a mall. You're not going to get as much foot traffic there. You want to be close to a hospital, medical offices, or C, you have to be close to local traffic like the metro or bus service or anything like that. So you have to find the right location, and the right location is always expensive. You have to keep that in mind as well. But at some point you have to weigh your benefits and then go with it. The next one is how to set up shop. Now this is a fun one. Okay, so as I said earlier, you could make a franchise or you could make your own mom and pop shop. We decided to do a mom and pop. We decided to start with a shoestring budget. I mean, when I say shoestring, it was really shoestring. I had some savings from my old job, and that's what we started with. So I'll give you an example. When we were trying to come up with a name for the clinic, I did want allied in it. And we looked at all these graphic designers, web designers, and it was turning out to be very expensive. So my husband found this website. It's called Fiverr.com, and it has a bunch of students there or young professionals who are just getting started, and they can do things, come up with logos or websites for you for a lot cheaper. And we found a nice student, and we told him we wanted something with allied in it, and it should have 3 of something. So in my mind, I was thinking physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech language pathology. And it got lost in translation, and when it came back, you can see my logo, it has a tree in it. So he thought we wanted a tree. And so we have the tree, but it looked really good, and we decided to stick with it. So you would not believe I paid very little for this, but he did a wonderful job, and he can add, the student who did this for us can add this to his portfolio. So there are different ways of getting to it. Then when I was telling about checking the laws and regulations, there are so many different companies like LegalZoom.com, Rocket Lawyer, where you can pay a small fee and get lawyers to look at your paperwork. It's really very inexpensive, and I've had good experience with those lawyers. They really go through your paperwork, make sure you have it right, and they come back with any changes you need to make or something. So don't feel like you need to hire a lawyer for $2,000 for an hour, not needed. And the membership for these agencies, LegalZoom or Rocket Lawyer, it's all renewable as well. That's something else you can do. Then the other stuff we did was about what equipment to buy. And I looked at it, I read a lot of stuff, and we finally decided that most people are not looking for the bells and whistles. They just want to get better. So I could buy a $5,000 treadmill, or I could buy a $2,000 treadmill. I could have all kinds of weights. I could have a fancy setup, or I could have all the basics that were needed, but make the patient better. So we decided to go with the basic equipment. We have pretty much everything by now in the clinic, but when we started, it was a bunch of one machine, couple of warm-up equipment, and there were some bands, some weights, ultrasound equipment, and that's how we started. So it can be done with a lot less equipment, right? Now, the next one is marketing strategies. Now, this is really important. If you're starting on your own and you don't have a big budget like the franchise do, you have to be innovative, okay? What I am comfortable with is what I did. So when I was reading about how to do marketing, the other companies I worked for, they hired marketers. They hired marketers $70,000 per year, and they would market. That was the only thing that they did. They went out and sold this company's name. Well, I couldn't afford $70,000 for myself. How could I hire a marketer? But what I did was I did what these marketers would have done. I didn't have patients coming through the door on the first day. So I went and knocked on each door. I would literally take my brochures, my cards, and I would just drive around the clinic. Wherever I saw a doctor's office, I would go knock on the door, give them my cards, give them my information, and say hello, and move on. So this is not easy for a lot of people to do because you have seen door-to-door marketers. Sometimes we don't treat them very nicely. But you know what? That's when you have to develop a thick skin, and you have to remove yourself from the situation. They don't know you. They don't know you personally. They just don't want a marketer at their door. But that needed to be done. I needed to pound the pavement. That's how I got a lot of my referral sources. Now, for example, you're not comfortable going door to door as me, but there are other ways. Are you more comfortable with social media? Are you a blogger? Can you do other visits, like go to a school and talk to the teachers that you have a program for children or something like that? So there are different ways. So the crux of the matter is do what you're comfortable with. Doesn't mean my way is the right way. It's just you have to find what you're comfortable with. I did not choose social media for my marketing in the first place because I'm not comfortable with it. I can write a blog, but I would probably write one in 6 months. How's that going to keep up? So I did what I'm comfortable with. Now, how to hold your own in a saturated market. So when we were looking for physical therapy places to rent, what I noticed was every single building that I went to had another physical therapy practice already there, established, up and running. That was, I want to say, about 4 or 5 buildings. And at that point, I was like, this is never ending. At some point, I have to take the risk. So guess what? The location I am at right now, on that same floor, we have 4 floors. I'm on the 4th floor. Right next door is a huge physical therapy practice. They have about 6 or 7 locations around Northern Virginia and DC. In this particular practice right next door, I think they employ about 8 physical therapists. They have orthopedic surgeons working with them, podiatrists working with them, the whole shebang. So they're great. But right next to them, I opened my little shop up, and I'm able to hold my own. So how's that possible? So what they have is a big budget. They have a lot of money, they have a lot of doctors with them, and they can market themselves well. They can get a lot of referrals from the doctors. But, I don't have that much money, but what I have is time. So instead of hiring a marketer, or instead of paying big bucks for all these purposes or getting referrals, what I do is spend more time with my patient. So when I spoke with one of the physical therapists next door in that practice, and on a daily basis, he sees about 40 patients. And so you can do the math. In about a 10-hour day, he's seeing 4 patients per hour. You and I know as physical therapists, 15 minutes is not enough to understand someone's condition, treat them, and set a plan for a follow-up. But what I do, I spend an hour with that patient. My patient is exhilarated. No one in their history of physical therapy has ever spent an hour with them. They cannot stop talking about me enough. Within an hour, you can understand so many things about what's going on. You need to find out how they sit at home, what they do as sports, what their habits are. I mean, it's wonderful. I got this. I could have never gotten an hour with the patient if I were working for someone else. So I spend an hour with the patient. What happens is my patient is extremely happy. My patient gets better faster. My patient goes home and tells his entire family, friends, his coworkers, and my patient becomes my marketer. So, you don't have to have a whole lot of money to market yourself. Work with what you have, work with whatever skill set you have, and it'll work. I read somewhere, that you don't have to be the best. You just have to make your patient feel the best. So think about it, and this is where all the education that we got comes in handy. Be a good clinician, be a good listener, be a good historian, and you'll succeed. You already have all the tools that you need to succeed. The next one we're going to talk about is how to diversify. When I say diversify, is don't put all your eggs in one basket. If initially I went and looked for doctors referrals, and it was working well. But you know, that situation can change. For example, I had a doctor who was sending me a lot of patients, and single-handedly, he could have kept up my practice. But, and you know, it's very easy to get complacent. But one day he was unhappy with his job, he up and quit. So that source dried up right away, like within a week. What do you do then? So early on, I decided we need to diversify. And again, with diversifying, it's not that difficult to do. You know, you can be very active in your own community. For example, you have kids, they play sports, be active in their sports, be there for their games. You can volunteer your time, treat the little kids if they have any injuries. That's how you get your name out.
डायनिंग टेबलवर बसली तिचं ते मागचं.
And the next is you can go to gyms, you can go to different, like a fencing. I even went to a place where they teach fencing, gymnastics, all these different kinds of things that you can do. A cricket academy. So there's so many options. So you don't have to restrict yourself just to one thing, because you know nothing is permanent. Things keep changing all the time. So talk to neurologists, talk to I'll tell you a story as we go further about talking, or maybe I can share it now. So as physical therapists, we learn a lot about all the joints, all the muscles and everything. At least I learned just a little bit about TMJ, the jaw. For some reason, poor TMJ gets pushed around, you know, the dentists want to push it as medical, and medical want to push it over to dentists. But it is a joint. It has a ball and socket, and we need it all the time. I'm using it right now. So what happened is 3 years ago, a dentist moved into my building. Now you would think physical therapist, dentist, what do we have in common? But again, I did what I could. I had a lot of time. I went over there and, like a good neighbor, welcomed them. And turns out the dentist was not doing regular dentistry. He's a TMJ specialist. And he asked me what I do. And when I said I'm the physical therapist next door, he said, why don't we sit and talk? So we both arranged a meeting, lunch meeting, and we both sat and talked about it. And he said, I really need someone like you to work with my TMJ patients, because they have so many other maladies like neck pain, upper back pain, shoulder issues. And I was like, sure. So when I started seeing his patients, and here's an important lesson: do not say no. Do not say no. When a dentist asks you, can you see my patient? Don't say no. You have enough knowledge that was given to you in your undergrad, in your postgrad, to treat any joint in the body, any muscle in the body. So don't say no. What I did was, that same day I went home and looked for all my books. I had taken an elective when I was in Oakland University about the temporomandibular joint, and I read it up, the whole thing, anatomy, physiology. I looked at how to do the joint moves, the stretching and everything. And then I started seeing his patients. As I found out within 6 months that it's a good referral source, the doctor is good, he's helping patients, they're getting better with therapy, I went ahead and signed up for a lot of hands-on manual therapy courses with the TMJ. Believe me, they're out there. And now I treat a lot of TMJ patients. I might be one of the few in the area who does that, which my next door therapy does not. So here it is, you know, that's how I created my niche there. I'm a orthopedic manual therapist, but I also took a course on vestibular rehab, and I'm very strategically located next to a neurologist. So here are patients who got into a car accident, and they have really bad neck pain, but because of the whiplash, they also have dizziness, vertigo. So instead of them going to 2 different therapy places, we are a one-stop shop. I can treat your vertigo, I can treat your neck. So these are the things, these are different things you can add on to your basket as a physical therapist. And it doesn't have to happen overnight. It can take some time, but it can be done. Okay, so here we are. I'm going to take a little pause here and see if anyone has any questions. I hear the chat is not working, so you can unmute yourself and go ahead and ask anything if you want to. I guess I'm making myself crystal clear, huh? All right, Selim, you can hear me okay, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
I request Manjusha Nayak, participant, to disable the video.
Yes. Okay.
Manjusha Nayak, can you please disable your video? Yeah, you please go ahead.
Okay. All right. Now I'm going to go ahead to my next slide. Okay. Strategies for operation and maintenance. So this is your day-to-day working of how your clinic should work, what you need to do in order for smooth functioning of your clinic. So from now onwards, I'm only going to talk about the clinic because I don't have any other type of business. And so it's going to be a little more streamlined towards how to run a brick and mortar outpatient orthopedic physical therapy practice. Okay. So the first one is procedures and protocols. Now this is what I learned from all the other big companies that I work for. There should be a procedure in place for everything. It's really important because when things happen and things happen really suddenly, you don't have time to think and sometimes you're bound to make wrong decisions. So you have to think of every different possibility. And then sometimes if you can't think of it, if it happens the first time, you learn from that mistake and set up a protocol. For example, now this is something, for example, I'll give you a very simple thing. Today, I'm doing handwritten notes. I'm talking about a few years ago. And suddenly the government tells you that you need to transition from handwritten notes to EMR ASAP. So what do? We have to pick out a good EMR, and we have to sit down all the therapists and train them on how to do EMRs. So for the next time, when it's time to open a different clinic or when you go on your own, you already know what EMR works. So that's the first thing I did when I started my business, is got an EMR. And we'll talk about more if you have any questions about it, of how to choose a good electronic medical record system. Okay. Then other important stuff here, at least, is the HIPAA training. You know, you have to make sure that each and every employee that you hire is very well aware of how to protect your patient's privacy. This is a big deal. Someone can lose their license over this. So there, you can do a lot of in-services. And what I do is I set up time every 2 months. We set up half an afternoon on a Friday, and there are in-services. And again, there are different ways of getting in-services because a lot of these trainers are expensive. So what we do is sometimes I can contact a continuing education company and tell them, how about you conduct your course in my location? You know, what they do is give me 2 free seats. All I have to provide them is with some breakfast and some snacks, and I get 2 free seats. My therapists get all this education free of cost, and my clinic gets a lot of exposure, even national exposure. So these are different things you can do. But for every little thing, there should be a procedure and a protocol. Okay. So next, we're going to talk about outsourcing or delegating people to do their work. Okay. My screen is not, okay, here we go. All right, all of them are here now. Never mind. So outsourcing. So you want to do it all, but you shouldn't. You remember what your strengths are and you try to stick to those. So my strength is being a clinician, a manual therapist, physical therapist. I don't want to get wrapped up in billing. So in the US, where we work with private insurance companies, it is so important to do the right type of billing. So I'll tell you a funny story. When I was thinking of how to start my business, I had no idea what to do. So I remembered my old workplace had a person who used to work with credentialing therapists, get them on board, get all their paperwork together. So I called that person on their office line and I said, hey, I was thinking of starting my own business. I just wanted a little bit of guidance from you. And she said, I'm at work right now. I'm going to give you a call an hour later from my cell phone. And I thought, that's it. There goes my source. She's never going to call me back. But an hour later, she called me and she said, you know what? You couldn't have called me at a better time because I have my own company where I do billing and credentialing for people like as like a freelancer, and you can work with me and I can get you all set up. So you need to find someone like that who can set these things up. Now it could be someone you can put up an ad, but there are people who can help you with billing, and it doesn't have to be a big medical billing company. It can be someone small. Like my biller works from her home office, and it works out fine. She never has to come to the clinic, but she has been with me from day one, and she has also been helping me to get credentialed, finding out a lot of information because she is on this board for billers. So find someone like that. Now, the other one is be open to change. Now, things are changing every day. So for example, being a manual therapist, I do manips, I do moves, and I do muscle releases and all of that. And people were starting to talk about dry needling. And I was like, oh my gosh, no, that's not for me. I use my hands. But the more more time passed, more doctors started to ask about it. I started getting patients calling about it. And you know what? One day I bit the bullet. I was like, you know what? Let me go get this training. And I got the training. I'm certified now as a dry needling. I can do dry needling, and it is getting me great results. So roll with the punches. Do not be very tied to what you learned in school, because you're always learning. Learning never stops. Okay. So the next one is you have to wear multiple hats. Now you are an entrepreneur. If you're going to start on a shoestring budget, you got to do it all. You got to be the receptionist. You got to be the janitor. You got to be the marketer. You got to be the therapist. And you got to be the boss. So learn everything. There should be nothing in your practice that you cannot do. I'll tell you more about it in the next slide about why is it so important to do that. And the last one, but it's really important, is staffing. Whoever you're hiring is going to be the face of your clinic. When you're not there, they are the ones managing your clinic. So you have to choose wisely. We have some great therapists out there, and they do a great job. But sometimes the therapist might be good, but they might not be right for your practice. So you have to make that decision as well. These are really tough decisions, but this is the icky part of being the owner is you have to do the hiring, but you have to do the firing as well. So we'll talk more about it. And the last one is to be the boss. That means, you're going to reap all the benefits, all the profits, all the name, all the fame, you're going to reap it. But you have to put up with the bad stuff too. What they say is like, if you want the sunshine, you got to put up with the rain too. So there's a bad comment on the internet, it's on you. They're not going to talk about a specific therapist. It's your name out there. So just again, developing a thick skin. Don't let it affect you so much, and move on. Okay. All right. So I'm going to take just a second of break. Let me know if anyone has any questions. Right, good to go. Let's go to the next slide. All right, surviving a crisis. This is what we're going through right now. Okay, so planned versus unplanned. So I'll talk briefly on this because planned crisis is, you're going to have two therapists going away on vacation at a certain date, and you have a boatload of patients to treat. So it's a planned situation. You have a lot of people going away on a lot. That happens a lot in summer or during the holidays. So how do you work with it? You are trying to find coverage for your clinic and things like that. That's one of the things. The other one is the current, and the unplanned crisis is going to be, for example, you run out of power. So what do you do then? I've treated patients when it was completely dark because my phone is not even working to call and cancel their appointments. But you know what? People are very understanding. You be upfront about what your problem is, and they will work with you. Of course, you'll get that one person who is a problem maker, but other than that, my patients have been very understanding. Sometimes we don't have internet. So what we do is we take a picture of our schedule and then use our cell phones to call the patients. So just be ready. Don't get hassled. Life goes on. People are understanding. They're people just like us, and they will understand. Okay. The next one is to take ownership on what you're doing. Now, for example, one day I was working in the clinic and we had a patient fall. Okay, it happens. It's going to happen at some point in your practice. A patient falls on your watch, even though you were not the one treating it. I had a PT assistant treating them, but it's I have to take ownership for it. You got to have broad shoulders. So this is just an example. So what you do is you go back to your procedures and protocols, you follow everything, and be humane about it. Check up on the patient, call on the patient, and be ready to face whatever's going to happen. So effective communication. Now here's, I'm going to talk a little bit about what is going on right now with the COVID-19 crisis. So in the March of this year is one of the hardest times as a business owner that I went through. Within a week or two, all our clients dried up. We had nobody coming through the doors. We went from a very busy clinic to literally nobody in the clinic. We went from 500 visits a month to less than 100. It was very difficult. So what do you do? The first thing that we did, this is where I'm going to talk about unplanned. One day I sat one of my therapists and said, sit over here, don't see any patients, and do as much research as you can about telehealth. Now, back in January, if you would have asked me about telehealth, I would have laughed. I was like, oh, come on, I'm a manual therapist. I treat people with my hands. Telehealth is like, it's not for me. But guess what? We started doing it before anyone else did. My therapist did all the research. We set up with Doxy.me, and we started keeping in touch with our patients. We told our receptionists, everybody who cancels because of this problem, offer them a televisit. Tell them, we don't even care if your insurance company doesn't cover it. Let's just communicate with our patients. And all the ones that we did telehealth with are coming back now as regular patients again. So be open to change. Don't be too proud. Change. Okay. And when it comes to effective communication, it was really hard. I could not provide any work for my therapists, my staff. I was the one paying their salaries, and I didn't have any money to pay any salaries because we pretty much dried up. There was nobody coming through the doors. So I sat my therapist, my receptionist one-on-one, and I asked them, heart to heart, like, what is your financial situation? You know, tell me, how long can you last without a paycheck? What happens if you have to go on unemployment? And they appreciated it. It was very hard. It was very hard for them. It was very hard for me. And I did as much as I can to give them a paycheck, but at one point I couldn't. So, and at that point, people were starting to get scared on how should they come and keep treating patients. So what I did, I told all of them to stay at home, stay safe, and I was the only one. I was the only one coming to the clinic, treating patients and taking care of them. I had one receptionist who hung on with me. You'll find that one person who will stick with you. And both of us got through the month of March and April. And then you have to look out for your options. I looked into the small business loans that the government was giving, talked to Medicare, different avenues, and I was able to get a nice loan, and I was able to bring everybody back. But what happened is none of my employees is unhappy with me because of what happened. They completely understand and they're with me, and I'm very grateful for them. So put your people first. These are the lessons learned. You know, we're going to make mistakes. You just learn from them and move on. You know, it's not the end of the world. We're just people. And invest for the future. So what we're going to do now is we're looking into telehealth, and this might become a thing for the future. And like it or not, you know, we have to come to terms with it. So I'm just giving you one example, but there's going to be so many. So get ready for it. You know, always be prepared for what's going to happen. Right? Okay. And here it is. These are some of the takeaways for all of you young grads there, or even my classmates who have been therapists for a long time and want to go out on their own. You know, successful people keep moving. They make mistakes, but they don't quit. And there is no good time to start. You know, you're never going to know you're never going to be 100% ready. But just start anyways. You have all the things that you need. Just take that first step. I've added my website here, allied-hs.com. And this website was created by one of our very good friends. When I started the clinic, he offered to make it free of cost. Since then, the website has changed a lot, and now I am in a position to pay him for it. But that's not his only job. He has a different day job, so he can make a website for you for a lot less money than some other things out there. That's my email address if you ever want to shoot me an email. I don't know it all, but I can really help you with whatever questions you have. And if I don't have the answers, I can try to direct you to the right people. So let me stop screen sharing. Okay. Any questions, anybody?
Hello.
Hello. Yes.
Hello, ma'am. I'm Tirtha Shetty.
Yes.
Yeah. Any tips on how do you get better communication with the doctors to get better referrals or more referrals?
Yeah, that's a really good question. This goes back to when I was working for other clinics as well, and I got this point. Doctors, I mean, they're don't think that they are unapproachable. So what I do is I go over to the doctors. We set up like for example, a lunch meeting with them. I provide lunch for their clinic, and that way I get those 15 minutes with the doctor. Okay. What you want to tell the doctor is what you do. They are professionals. They have nothing personal against you. All they want to see is how your patient, that their patient is getting better. So tell them what you're doing differently for their patient. And for example, an orthopedic surgeon, I would go ahead and ask the patient, like doctor, sometimes I see a patient on the weekend and it's hard to reach you, it's hard to get to you through your office. How do I communicate with you if my patient is getting better, like is ahead of schedule, or not getting better if I have some concerns? And the doctors would give me their cell phone number right away because they are really concerned about their patient. You jot down that cell phone number, you got cell phone numbers of 5 different orthopedic surgeons in the area. And that's how you put your name out there. So tell them how much what you're doing for your patient. Don't try to get in their face too much, try to talk too many times. You know, they're really busy. You spend, maybe go see them once every couple of months or something. Keep putting your name out there. But text the doctor, like so and so patient is ahead of schedule. Do you want me to go to the next protocol? Things like that. And then every time, like the EMR I always have my clinic logo on there. So I always, every note that I do for initial evaluation or reevaluation, I fax it over to the doctor's office. Keep communication open. Tell them how much you are invested in their patient's well-being, and they will definitely respond. And then they always keep seeing that logo of yours. It's like an ad, you know, you keep seeing that logo again and again, they will remember you.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am. This class was really good.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I'm honored.
Hello.
Yes.
Hello. Hello, ma'am. Ma'am, this is Mansi, ma'am.
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to ask question about the protocols you said. Ma'am, the protocols you fix, like especially if you want to decide for a protocol regarding any post-op patient like ACL, where are fixed protocols. So how do you go about that? Like sometimes surgeons have their own protocols, and sometimes like even if you fix a protocol for your clinic per se, and you have someone under you working for you, is the decision like should is like the power given to the clinician who is treating to make the changes, or like how do you go about that protocol?
Right. That's a great question because, yeah, go ahead. Did you not finish?
Yes, and those protocols and those are the protocols condition-based protocols, and the other protocols are based about the institutional policy, like if something happens, what should be done.
Right.
So is that conveyed through the training, or it's drilled with the situation? I don't like the institutional habits and the condition specific protocols.
Right.
That
I got it. Yeah. So when it comes down to the condition, I would respect the surgeon. The surgeon is the one who did the surgery, and even if surgeon A has a different protocol than surgeon B, you have to follow that. So this will answer Tirtha's question again. That is how you communicate with your doctor. I get a patient with an ACL. Sometimes I get a patient on the second day post-surgery, and sometimes I get a patient 2 weeks after that. So obviously these two doctors have two different protocols. So myself and both of my therapists, if the doctor doesn't give us a protocol, we call their office. We get in touch with the surgeon. We're like, hey, this is what we're seeing. Is there something you want us to do differently? Most doctors at this point, I mean, you guys are lucky. Physical therapy has come a long way. 20 years ago, I could not even lift a pencil without the doctor's instructions. But now we have a lot more leeway. You tell the doctor your educated opinion, and the doctor will tell you what to do. So as far as conditions go, for specifically post-surgical conditions, you need to get in touch with the surgeon. That is how you're going to gain their trust, and that is how they're going to be open to your suggestions. So you get 10 of their patients better with their protocol, and number 11, you feel like things should be done differently. That doctor is going to be open to your view, but not on the first patient. Okay. Now the second one is the institutional protocol. These are set. These are set right from day one. When a new hire comes in, you can make a booklet. You can send an email to them with a list with the PDF of what to do and what not to do. These things cannot be changed. But at the same time, we have meetings. We have meetings once a month, and I tell all my therapists, please come up with ideas of what to do. I'm a therapist essentially, you know. I feel like I'm a therapist first and a business owner later. So I am open to whatever suggestions they have. Take into consideration all the suggestions, but institutional policies, for example, a patient comes in now in the COVID crisis, okay? When patients are coming in, we check their temperature, and then we make sure they have a mask on. We have a mask on, we have gloves on, and then we treat them. Now, for example, a patient comes in and they have a high temperature. The institutional protocol says we cannot see them. We cannot see them. You tell the patient nicely, then my therapist will contact me that this is what happened, and we go with that. Does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, I actually had one more question, ma'am, about the profit, ma'am. Like, because the situation in US and here is different regarding the insurance. So, how do you decide about the profits with respect to billing and like that?
So
The patient.
there is an industry norm going on. So when I first started, billers would charge about 6% of per every case or something. So they take a percentage of the money you make on every visit. Okay. So in India, if you're not using the regular, like health insurances like US, you come up with an amount. You come up with an amount that's going to be cash pay. That the first evaluation charges maybe it's like 500 rupees, and then the follow-ups after that are going to be 350, and you stick with that. Now, this is really important because for some reason people can go to a big store and pay, you know, $500 for a pair of earrings and not say anything, but then when they come to the therapist, they will haggle with you for prices. I mean, it is unbelievable. It happens all over the world. But you're doing a great service, and you have to be sure on that you charge for your time. And it's not just that half an hour or that hour that you're spending with them. You're billing them for this 9 years worth of education that you had to get to that point. So set up prices. You can set up a price there. And with us, what we do is the insurance company, when we get in contract with them, they decide how much they're going to pay for a certain service. And we have no other choice. We have to go with it because they get us the foot traffic. But if I had a cash-based practice, I would set up prices and just stick with those. Is that what you were asking?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Yeah. Do not feel bad about what you're charging. You're not charging for that half hour. You're charging for all the education, all the years that you have put into it.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. It was very good webinar, ma'am. We got to learn a lot of things. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yeah, any other questions from any other participants?
Hi, Madhura.
Hi, Bhamini ma'am. How are you?
Good, good. I think others don't have a question, so it was so good to see you here in this platform. Thanks for connecting again. Yeah.
Thank you, Bhamini.
It was
Good to hear you.
it was really interesting. And we being in an educational institution and understanding different perspectives is very important for both undergraduate as well as the postgraduate students.
Yes.
You did a good job. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
It's all because of you. Thank you for spending all that time and being patient with me.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
Yep, I think there is no other questions. So we have come to the end of the session. So at the outset, I would like to, on behalf of HOD and all faculty members, I would like to thank you so much for accepting our invitation to support our Global Alumni Webinar Series. It's very nice to see our alumni is doing extremely good So thank you so much for accepting our invitation and sharing your experiences as a successful entrepreneur.
Thank you so much. I feel honored. Thank you.
Yeah, the purpose of this alumni webinar, there are two dual purpose. So one is to increase the visibility of our alumni across the globe, as well as to expand our network. Expanding network in the sense we need to connect our graduates and the young professionals with experienced, seasoned professionals, so that they are finding a very good place. So with that, in that context, the alumni webinar series has been organized by Physiotherapy MCHP, and you being a member of our expanded family. So thank you for accepting the invitation. So it was all about being an entrepreneur. It is all about having the persistence, courage, and commitment. It's all like sailing in the sea. So we have to be ready when the storms will come up. There could be many things that would deviate our path. We should be really careful while sailing the sea. And you have brought in several aspects of being a successful entrepreneur, be it marketing skills, being collaborations with interprofessionals, bringing in other professionals to meet the expectations of the patients, or as well as of other professionals. So it is nice to have you as a resource faculty. And on this unexplored and very little, very few people have been a successful entrepreneur. So the context differs. So the practice in US and practice in India, it differs. But however, there are many commonalities where our young graduates can take tips from your success story, and they can go ahead in establishing their own clinics or their business model. So thank you so much once again. Any final thoughts?
No, I just want to tell everybody that you can do it. You know, if I can do it, you can. If I can do it with two little babies, you can. You need to find your support system, and you can do it. As Selvam knows, so my husband is my support system. He's right here. He's helping me out right now too. He's always there, in one form or the other. You can do it. Just go for it.
Okay, thank you so much for sharing your experiences. So hope to get reconnected once again. Just pass on the word in your friend circle, as we encourage them to join Physiotherapy MCHP through social media. We just really wanted to stay connected with you all, and we all count you in so that you can give your opinion as an industrial expert, so that we can evolve a dynamic curriculum.
Right. Yes. Yeah, yes, that's a good idea. Yes.
Yeah. So we count you all in. So just pass on the word.
Yes, thank you. And really, it's a great initiative. I think more universities should do it. This is just great. I think this is a very good step to connect our students right now with the alumnus. I'm very proud to be part of Manipal.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, we'll sign off. Bye.
Yes. Bye.